Is it time for a general election? So Theresa May is weak. The Salzburg negotiations didn't go so well. She faced cabinet resignations and might soon face a Tory revolt. Chequers is our only Brexit deal option, and it seems dead. We're in a deadlock situation now, where neither the EU nor the UK can decide what to do about Brexit. A second referendum might just be too complex as yet to offer to the British people. We can't decide what question we'd ask and how we'd frame it so that we wouldn't remain in the European Union, given we've already voted to leave. Labour want a general election to get in power, and Tory sources have been telling the papers that one is under consideration, although the government denies it. So a general election is a process relatively easy to understand, well, easier than a referendum anyway. I know we've got a first past the post system, and voting for your MP also means voting for a potential Prime Minister, but it's easier than a referendum, which is just a vote between particular options of Brexit. Manifestos are made, and in those manifestos can be Brexit options. The UK can vote on making the UK's response to Brexit clearer, and an election can create clearly defined UK power, making unlikable politicians lose their jobs. But an election is a lengthy, expensive process of campaigns and debates which take time to do, time that we don't have before Article 50 runs out. In modern times, we've seen more minority governments and hung parliaments than the opposite, and elections are voted on a range of topics, not just Brexit, and if there are snap elections, often backfire on the government who calls for them. But what would be the result of an election, and how could the parties win? Well, the Tories need to change their leader. Theresa May is not popular. Then they would need to ditch the Chequers plan. It's not popular either. Then they would need to come up with a manifesto that both delivers Brexit and promises more spending, not less, to compete with the Labour manifesto. They would need to be seen to deliver Brexit to win the next general election and to win core voters. Labour would have to find a balance between Remainer sides of the party, such as Momentum, who want a second referendum, and core Labour voters in the north who voted to leave, and even Jeremy Corbyn, who doesn't seem keen on the idea of a second referendum. They would have to keep people like Diane Abbott out of the spotlight, which they seem to have been doing lately anyway. They would have to be strong and clear on their messages of anti-Semitism, which again they've struggled with lately. Then they would need to prove their competency on the economy, which again they've struggled with in the past. Then they would need to defeat the SNP in Scotland. The SNP would have to overcome their recent sexual allegations saga surrounding key independence campaigner Alex Salmond. They would struggle to sell an independent Scotland in tumultuous times. Look what happened in the last election. But they might just get away with pushing for a second EU referendum, though, given that Scotland voted to remain. The biggest problem for the Lib Dems right now is that Vince Cable is old and has already announced his resignation, meaning he seems like a spent force. Secondly, they have to win over the trust of students who are their core voters and most likely Remainers. But of course, ever since they increased tuition fees in coalition with the Tory government, they have declined in their popularity. The other parties who aren't significant forces in Parliament might struggle to break through in times when the country wants to leave the EU. The country wants to leave on good terms, not on politically divisive and economically uncertain terms. And that means the public want a strong and stable government. But when mistakes get made by the establishment, opposition parties like UKIP and other brand new parties rise up. Then the more votes go away from the governing party, and the more likely it is we have a hung parliament again. So is it a good idea to have a general election? Well, no, is the simple answer. But when looking at the alternatives to Chequers, you have a no deal which threatens large areas of the economy, a second referendum which threatens the results of the first, And then finally, an election which threatens all of it, but at least offers a chance to renegotiate not just Brexit, but the entire future of the country. But do you agree with me? Join in the debate below and subscribe.